Brexit concerns adding to the business turmoil for some of these companies operating across the pond. New research from the Bank of England finds the Brexit process has slashed the productivity of British companies up to 5% since the 2016 vote to leave the EU. This comes as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is warning his opponents that by blocking a potential no-deal Brexit, they are damaging the chances of getting a deal. Joining us is Eric Stewart. He is the president of the U.S.-Poland Business Council. Eric, good to have you on today. It doesn't necessarily surprise me, these numbers, given that if you are a business that's operating in the U.K., you have no more clarity than you did 3 years ago when that Brexit vote passed in terms of what that business environment is going to be like post-Brexit. Give us a sense of what kind of impact this has had on EU countries as a whole. We focus so much on the British side of things, obviously, because that is where the exit's going to happen. And yet, you've got to wonder European companies who are operating what they're thinking the longer this uncertainty continues.
Well, Kika, what we've already seen so far since 2016 is over 40% increase of investment outside of the UK into other EU markets. So you're already seeing the impact significantly of investors who are looking outside of the UK saying, I've got to find another market within the EU so I don't disrupt my supply chains. I've got to find opportunities where I can grow my business inside the EU 26 country market. And so that's why you look at countries like Poland, and they're very well positioned to capitalize on a lot of that new investment.
One of the other things we've been watching closely over in Europe is the U.S.-EU trade deal. And on that front, we did hear from President Trump over at the G7 summit, strike an optimistic tone. He said we're very close to maybe making a deal with the EU because they don't want tariffs as well. Where do you see the prospects of that? As President Trump puts himself in a bind, at least on the U.S.-China issue, does that increase the likelihood of the U.S. willing to push for some concessions on the EU trade negotiations?
Listen, I think the business community would love to see any kind of deal happen with the EU, as we call it TTIP, some type of free trade agreement between our two nations would be fantastic. It's very complicated, very difficult when you bring in the regulatory, you bring in finance, you bring in geographical indicators, you bring in the film industry, you bring in agriculture. It's very difficult. So if the Trump administration wants to negotiate something simple and zero out tariffs on some of the easiest areas, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, that would signal to the rest of the world, Europe is our friend, Europe is our partner, Europe is where we're going to do business. That would be amazing for our market, for their market, and we'd be looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of easy, low-hanging fruit that would increase both of our economies.
Eric, of course, we were planning to talk to you about the president's visit over to Poland that canceled because of Hurricane Dorian. U.S. and Poland relationship has really strengthened under this administration at a time when we have seen the U.S. push further away from some of the more traditional allies like France as well as Germany. I wonder what role you see Poland playing in at least trying to, if you will, maybe warm up the U.S. and other EU members as well. I mean, what is the role of Poland at a time when Poland has also increasingly isolated itself from the rest of Europe?
Listen, Vice President Pence will be there first and foremost to commemorate World War II and the victims from that World War. Secondly, he will be there, and Trump wanted to be there, obviously, to further strengthen one of our greatest allies anywhere in the world, and that being Poland. And with the looming possibilities of Brexit and likelihood of Brexit and the Brits leaving the European Union, a country like Poland will likely end up being one of the if not the best friend of the United States, one of the best friends, but likely it will be the best friend. We don't want the Brits to leave. We love the Brits. They're still our greatest friend, but inside the EU, it's going to be Poland. Poland sees eye to eye with us in a lot of different areas, and their economies are growing in the right direction. They're, as I said, big supporters and allies of our confrontations around the world. They're trying to diversify their energy supplies. That's something that the U.S. Has an interest in as well, in exporting LNG. There's lots of reasons for President Trump to want to double down on Poland, and he's doing exactly that.
And where do these things stand, you think, on what has now been dubbed Fort Trump? We're talking about the military presence, the build-out over in Poland. That was seen as sort of this exchange between the two countries. Now there's questions about whether that build-out will actually happen as promised. Where do things stand on that front, and could we see any movement with the vice president heading to Poland?
Yeah, the commitment to Poland and the commitment to having missile defense shield in Poland, the commitment to having more troops in Poland is all very, very clear. Whether we have a permanent troop and whether we have a Fort Trump, those two areas are still unclear. I think the Fort Trump is it seems to me as though a continual flattery between President Duda and President Trump. These two leaders get along very, very well. They see eye to eye on a lot of things. And, you know, United States, for example, we're looking at probably, I would say in the next few years, 15 to 20 billion more dollars of investment potential in Poland in the energy field, in the defense field, agriculture field, IT fields. There's lots of opportunities for us to continue to grow there. And I think you're going to continue to see this great relationship with President Trump, Vice President Pence, and President Duda.
Okay, Eric Stewart, appreciate your time today.
Thank you.